This Artist Express program is brought to you by the Paul G. Allen Charitable Foundation.
The world is chaotic. That's the first thing. The world is chaotic. We're all here in a chaotic situation. And what I try to do is make sense of all this. So the more specific it is, the more universal it is. Because I can talk about things that I know about or things that I'm interested in. And it's universal. Everyone can see it.
Now, we know you've been an artist in Seattle since 1973, but was that the first time that you discovered that this is the work that you wanted to do? Did you always know, or was it something that you discovered later in life?
No, I always knew that I wanted to work at it in some endeavor. I really started to paint along when I was about 14 years old. And my sister was a Sunday painter, and she helped me out quite a bit and trained me. And then as things developed, I went to School for Gifted Kids in Philadelphia, Fleischer Art Memorial. And that's when things really took off. And I also attended Bach Vocational School for Commercial Art. I worked at a lot of jobs that were crafty jobs, required finger dexterity and things like that.
So were you always working with shapes and geometrics?
Always working with shapes and geometrics, yeah. It was quite a thing that came out of my childhood, you know, living in the city and being with manhole covers and trolley lines and sidewalks. Squares were always there, that kind of thing.
What about dealing with the shapes and lines and the spatial relationships is so compelling to you?
Well, for one thing, I'm very comfortable with it. And most people see it as something aside, but I kind of take it on as a vocabulary, just something that I can work with. And these shapes and things are in my system. And when I begin to work, then these things pour out. It seems very natural to me. It seems natural, it's breathing.
Where do you begin your process? You know, when you start something, do you have to sketch it out first, or where does the idea come from?
Well, I have many ideas that are incomplete and are left at some stage of process. So when I begin to work, I almost see them in front of me, and then I just kind of fill them in. Yeah.
Let's look at this piece here that's next to you. Where would this piece begin, and what would inspire this piece?
It's called Map of Reason. I had another piece that was a little bit earlier, or around this time, that was called Train of Thought, and it dealt with the arcs and that kind of thing into how train of thought is following through from these arcs. And by doing that, it began a whole series of things coming out. So by working in maps, I work overhead like a bird's eye view. And these things are about reasons for doing things. So it's called Map of Reasoning.
You were quoted as saying, "Clearly art is a reflection of life engaged in a dialogue with passion and tension as mortar." How does that quote relate to your work?
Well, I think that it's something that is there all the time. What I'm saying, that is, the dialogue is ongoing. The tension comes from life struggles. The passion comes from engagement with relationships and that kind of thing. So these work back and forth. It's almost like a pendulum. These things are swinging, back and forth. So you have heightened areas and you have low areas, and these things begin to gel and they become part of your life. And this is your whole being. You can't get away from it, and that becomes the mortar that holds everything together. You know there's going to be high points, and you know there's going to be low points, and this is part of your system.
Now, through the years, you've developed several different series, and each series has its own style. Do these styles represent different things in your life?
Well, I think that actually, if you say style, you're really saying that there's a clear break or clear distinction. I want to clear that up, because we're talking about a continuity, but not necessarily style. More things happen kind of as, I would say, a syntax, one thing into another, one phase about another, the arts came first, or not really first, but around that time. These were earlier on, but they also had indications of diagonals in them. So the diagonals were always there. And these tilts and these things like that got into the quadrants, the arcs, these things became prevalent in the later work.
Your son was quoted in a video that was made about you saying that he believed that you expressed your feelings through your art. What does your work satisfy in you, and how do you express your feelings through these shapes, these lines and arcs?
Well, the shapes and the arcs and the way the work speaks all has a kind of symbolism. So if you just speak in terms of the United States, Philadelphia, Seattle, the West Coast, the East Coast, 3,000 miles, these things have crossed the country and erupted in Seattle. So they look very foreign, but they're not. I've actually brought them with me, because I have the intent and the striving of Philadelphia, and that's all in me at at this point. So when I'm working, these things are symbols of things that occurred to me in my childhood, in my marriage, in my life, relationships. They all become a form of expression.
Now, in relation to what we were just talking about, bringing those things with you from Philadelphia and using those in your life, let's look at this piece. What's the title of this piece, and how does this piece relate to what you were just talking about?
Well, the piece is called Arc with Three Diagonals, and it stems from a line drawing that was about a two-part sculpture, where that pink portion really is supposed to come out and sit beside it, which is like a two-part sculpture. So what you see here is the piece integrated in the form, and it's just kind of sitting there. But also it has an optical illusion because it looks like it's actually a depression. So you can read that into it too. It makes it very interesting for, people to view. People have a lot of perceptions about what it's about and that kind of thing.
Okay. Now, relating to your feelings going into the piece, what are you conjuring in your mind? I mean, what sort of an emotional state is going into the work when you're creating it? Say for that piece right there.
I think the emotional content is more in the color, where those are boy and girl colors, male and female colors. The depression idea, a cavity with female. The blue is about the arc primarily. It's the primary shape, which is like this piece over here. So, it's like a very archetypical shape to me. It's very, right where it should be. It's very common, I just kind of gave it a little twist,
Now, something you've said before to me, you said that you believe things should be simple, that life should just be simple. Mm-hmm. And when you first look at your work, it appears to be simple. But taking a closer look at it, it really reveals itself to be a very complicated simplicity. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, when I do a work, no matter what the media or medium, I always want to leave room for the viewer to enter the work and come up with their own interpretation. I don't want to close things off. I want to have more of an open situation so that they can enter it, interpret it, walk away, carry something with them. What I do in reality is just a clue to how to interpret the work. The title is more about myself. The title speaks of how I see the work and how I feel about it. It speaks more about the artist than the art. So it's not just something that's put on there, but it's like a catalog. It's just a catalog so that I know one piece from the other, which has that detachment, you see. So when I do the work is a solution to a problem, and then I go on to the next problem.
What do you mean by that? It's a solution to a problem.
Well, the world is chaotic. That's the first thing. The world is chaotic. We're all here in a chaotic situation. And what I try to do is make sense of all this. And by being an artist, I try to bring it together in a visual way. If I was not a visual artist, if I was some other kind of artist, I would try to come out of that chaos and bring order to dance, or order to music, or order to this, or order to that. That in itself is a very kind of thing that speaks, volumes, you would say, about the world, because it's really specific. So the more specific it is, the more universal it is, because I can talk about things that I know about or things that I'm interested in, and it's universal. Everyone can see it. Everyone has seen the wheel. Everyone has seen the sun, the circle. It's been in civilization since the beginning. And so now I'm using it in a different way. I'm taking a part of it. That curve is there. That curve is very soothing. That curve is very reliable. You know, it's with us every morning and every night. The curve is there. You know, it's there.
Your work comes in various forms, in prints, in drawings, in sculptures. Does a piece choose its medium, or how does that come about?
Well, there again, I think I'm after a solution to a problem, but I can't say that it's the proper solution. It might solve something in one way, but leave questions in another way. So if I draw something at arm's length, let's say, and it solves the problem for me that I'm thinking about at the time, it also presents something else. So when I see it, I can realize what it is, and then it suggests something else to me. Because I've seen that finished portion, I want to do something else. So I make a drawing, I look at the drawing, then I cut paper, and then I maybe make a form. I see the form. It's okay, but it's the wrong scale. So then I will make it larger, or flatten it, or take a piece of it and make it something else. But the initial beginning is always something that realizes it, in fact, in some dimension. Some dimensions. I actually have to have it in front of me. That's what I'm saying. And then it suggests these other things.
You say that you want your pieces to be open to your audience. You want them to be able to gain an interpretation of their own. What are some of the responses that you've gotten?
Most people take it seriously. They're not particularly entertained, because I'm not trying to entertain them. But they come away with many things. You know, they see things in the work that suggest things to them in their work or in their play. It suggests things to them. You know, a person can look at my work and come up with a solution to a pinochle hand. You know, it can be just that far-fetched. It isn't really something that's tied in. The trouble with most artists that have an entertainment feature is that everything is closure right then and there, and people don't walk away with things. You know, they entertain, they laugh, they giggle, they smile, they do all these things, they express things, but when they come out of the theater or when they come out of the show, they've left everything right there. So what I want to do is suggest things to them. Just give them a clue, a little bit, you know, a new salad, you try, new dressing, and go away with that.
Now let's talk about visual abstractions. Now you've shown regionally and nationally in several different galleries. How does running your own gallery compare? Are there more freedoms? Is it more complications?
Well, I'm just taking this on, but the first thing that has happened is that I have a whole new consensus to deal with, and this is on my mind. And I don't want to be Microsoft. I just want to show my work. Now, as a result of that, if I become wealthy or financially fit, then all that leads back to the art. So if there's any kind of rewards, that will go back into the art with bigger projects or things like that. I have a lot of work now that I'm showing that I've done in the past, and I can rotate this work for about a year. I figure about a year, and then take another look and see what happens. But visual abstraction has been with me since 1989, 1990. And it's been an idea, and I've been carrying it around. I've been writing it down. I've been thinking about it. People see it, and they're somewhat amused by it, actually. You know, they want to know just what it is, and you know, it's just a matter-of-fact thing. Visual abstraction is exactly what it is. It isn't anything else. You know, it's exactly what it is.
As you go on and you're creating this whole body of work, how, in the future, how do you hope that your work is remembered by our community?
Well, let me say this. I want to make a contribution to visual art. This has been my whole life. I realize that I'm standing on the shoulders of masters, but I want to give something back, and I want to bring something to the equation that hasn't been there before. You know, a new way of seeing something, an art form that can inspire younger artists and newer artists to go on from there.
This Artist Express program is brought to you by the Paul G. Allen Charitable Foundation.